Okay, so today's tomato review is going to be on the vintage wine tomato. Alright, so let's take a closer look at the vintage wine. Now, unfortunately, my plants got hit hard with blight and black spot septoria and tomato wilt, and I got hit with like 10 diseases this year. My plants utterly got wiped out, almost completely. But I did manage to try to salvage some of them. And unfortunately, I don't have any really good examples of this tomato. But I've been growing this tomato since day one when I moved here, which was about 9 or 10 years ago. So this was like one of the first tomatoes I started growing. When I first moved here, I probably bought about 25 or 30 tomato varieties. And I started growing my tomatoes out to see how things are going to work out in this new environment. And of course, my first year wasn't exactly a good year, though I did get some food. You know, I did get some tomatoes and peppers and things. So this was one of the first tomatoes I grew. And it's pretty much been one of my favorite tomatoes, my #1 grow tomatoes since day one. I've been growing this tomato every year since I moved here. And like I said, that's about 9 or 10 years ago. And with this tomato, you're going to get some good years and bad years, just like all tomatoes. This is not exactly a good year. If it didn't get hit with the spot, I forgot what they call this. It's a specific type of fungus that gets on the tomato fruit itself and just damages your fruit. It's not just blight. It's something. It's called something else. I don't remember exactly what it is. But there's a number of these blights that will attack the fruits. And this is one of them, along with early blight, late blight, tomato wilt, the virus, to this, to that, and all these other things. I got hit with like 10 diseases. I'm surprised my plants even grew this year. But I did manage to get a couple that I'm going to actually save the seeds. I'm not even going to eat those because they're really in bad shape. But this review is good enough for me to kind of show you the tomato and kind of show you what it looks like and try to give you an idea of what it tastes like. So anyway, that's enough about how it grows and how it's a producer. You kind of get an idea of that. Let me show you one of the tomatoes to give you an idea. Now, again, these are the fungals that attack your fruits, and that's what you're seeing right there. But in general, you're going to see a beautiful striping on this tomato, like that. All right, this is a damaged tomato, so I can't really. You can see here. Just an absolutely beautiful striping tomato. This is I guess you would call it a beefsteak, but see this shape of this tomato? See how that tomato looks? This is like a 1-pounder too. It's very compressed and heavy tomato. But you can see the shape of that tomato. That's what this tomato looks like. It's not generally like a round tomato like that, a beefsteak. It keeps that kind of shape for the most part. All the tomatoes look like that. That's kind of the tomato shape that it's going to have. And this tomato will make tomatoes 1 pound, 2, 3 pound tomatoes easy, no problem. In fact, when I have to grow this tomato, I didn't do it this year, but when I generally grow this tomato, I have to build a big solid cage for it. Even if you grow this tomato on the ground, it'll pull a whole vine to the ground. I mean, the tomatoes that come off this thing is absolutely enormous. They're heavy and they pull a whole plant down. I would almost recommend growing this tomato along the ground and just protect the tomato. Put bags around the tomato or something. Put a little rock under it. But the tomato's kind of too heavy to really be supported by the vine itself with just a stick. It'll snap. I've had this tomato plant literally bend tomato cages to the ground. Okay, to give you an idea on how heavy. There were probably 10 pounds in tomatoes on one plant. Just bent the whole tomato cage to the ground. So that's how heavy the tomatoes can be off this tomato. It's absolutely heavy. It's an amazing growing tomato. It's beautiful. This is, again, one of my #1 go-to tomatoes. I've been growing it for 10 years. I'm going to probably grow it for the next 10, maybe 20, 30, as long as I live, who knows. So let's take a closer look at the inside. And even though the outside is damaged with the blight, you can still easily eat the inside of it, providing it's not getting soft or rotten or the fruit flies ain't getting to it. But look at the inside of this tomato right here. You're going to tell me that's not an award-winning tomato right there? Look at that. An absolutely gorgeous tomato, 100%. And when these tomatoes ripen, they ripen very uniform. Even though you don't see too much wilding in the rind and in the center, there is some wilding in there, but not a lot. This is definitely an heirloom. You don't need to look for the wilding in there in this case, because it's a striped tomato. You can tell that it's already crossed. Though they could commercialize this tomato too, but whatever the case is, there's not a whole lot of wilding in there. You do see some in the center here, a little bit on the edge there, maybe a little bit there. Maybe it's just hard to see. But let me tell you something. This is a tomato, guys. If you want to grow one of the best tasting tomatoes, this is up there in the best tasting tomatoes. In fact, I'm almost crying that all my tomatoes got damaged like this year, because this is like what I live for. I live to grow these big tomatoes and get them towards the end of the year, and just start making salads out of them and salsas with them, and just being able to just cut them open and eat them with salt. You know, I mean, this is an awesome tomato. And also too, this is a great sauce tomato too. I've made sauce with this several times. It's an absolutely perfect tomato for sauce. You can see all the meat in the middle. You can also see how well attached the seeds are to this rind and how watery it is. It's even with all the damage and all the insect damage and everything, this tomato still produces absolutely gorgeous tomatoes year in and year out, every single year. You know, like I say, you do get off years. You know, like this is an off year for me because of getting hit by several different diseases this year. Normally it's not that bad. It's just usually blight or late blight or something like that. But this is like 7 or 8 different diseases that I got hit with. Along with the insect damages, I got the stink bugs are coming in now and biting up everything. It's like I'm just like, I don't even want to go back there. That's how bad it gets by the end of the year up here. Though, all right, so let's take a taste test out of this, and I'm going to cut it because I don't know what part is really good. Oh, something else I want to mention too before I do that. You can see the seeds are nice and green in there. You see that green, lime green color in the seeds? That's very unique to this tomato. And like the other tomatoes, like most of the black tomatoes that I'm growing, even though it's striped, like you see the striping in this tomato, even though it's striped, you can see these beautiful green shoulders it gets on the top. And it stripes its way down to the bottom, and it keeps that uniformity all the way to the bottom of the tomato. Every tomato will do that. Now, some years, it's very prominent. It all depends on the year and maybe the soil you're growing it in. I've had some years where that striping was really dark green. The contrast between the green and the orange was, and the red or pink or whatever, was very noticeable. It was extremely noticeable. And this tomato doesn't get pink. It generally gets orange. So it's green over orange. It does get a little pink at first, but if you let it ripen long enough on the table for a day or two like that, after you pick it, it'll get very orange. And the inside will get very rich in color. I mean, look at that. I can't help talking about that. I mean, that is unbelievable. That color, you could never get that from a store. Never, 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 never. Not that good. I mean, you get it from a farmer's market, but you're not going to get it from a supermarket. All right, so there's not too much blight on that, but I'll eat that piece and see what it tastes like. Has a pretty good balance. Flavor of the tomato is low, though. There's not a lot of tomato flavor. It's got a pretty good balance in the sweetness, and it's got a pretty good balance in the tangy part. That part came out good this year. It's very moist. This is a very moist tomato, so you're not going to have a chalky, dry effect from this at all. It's very chewable. It melts in your mouth. Skins are a little thick, but I'm not eating the skins anyway because of the blight on it. I mean, you could still make sauce with that too if you wanted to. You just peel it out and just cut out what's no good, and you can still eat it. But it's just, I got so many other tomatoes I got to go through. I don't have time to sit here and start picking around. But believe it or not, this year the flavor is not there. I'm a little disappointed with that. Normally that flavor comes in nice. Now, it does have the flavor of the tomato, but there's an over and undertone with this tomato. There's a slight earthy tone to it a little bit, normally with this tomato, but usually not enough to throw you off. But there is a little earthy tone. The earthy tone is there a little more than normal, but the taste of the tomato is very light. It's very watery and very light. It's just, let me take another bite. So what happens is when you eat these when you do taste tests on these tomatoes, when you eat them, you're going to get a very neutral flavor in the beginning. And then after you swallow it, the flavor needs to develop on the very back part of your tongue. That's that region of your tongue that the tomato is going to affect the most. It gives that tomato the effect that you get from tomatoes. That's what you look for when you're eating and taste testing these tomatoes. This one does that, but it takes like a half a minute before that flavor suddenly starts coming up and developing. So there's a delayed response. That's not normal for this tomato. Normally this tomato will deliver that flavor straight up out the gate, and you get that right away. You get that full effect, and that effect is very important when you're making sauces, by the way. You want to capture that effect from a tomato where it hits that region of your tongue as you're eating your pasta and stuff like that, your spaghetti, your pasta. You want that to affect that area of your tongue. And this tomato has made unbelievable sauces in the past. This year, though, it's a little underperformed. Like I said, it got hit with all kinds of sun scald and the blight and insect damage. Let's cut another piece and see if we can put a little salt on that and try to get that flavor up a little. But I tell you right now, it's very light for me this year. Not happy with that. But I'm not going to downgrade the tomato based on that, because I've been growing this tomato for so long that there's no way I could ever really fully downgrade it. It's just this year might get a lower grade because of that. The salt definitely helps bring that flavor back out to the surface, but you shouldn't be dependent on salt to really bring that tomato effect to the back of your tongue reasonably faster. So if you do get a tomato like this, you grow them and they're kind of like what I'm describing, add a little bit more salt to your cooking. And use sea salt. Don't use any other salt than sea salt, because sea salt has like a natural flavor enhancer in it. It really brings the flavor out of your food. Don't use regular table salt. That's mined or it's artificially made and stuff like that. You want sea salt. So unfortunately, that even with the salt, it's only going to be, I'm only going to be able to rate this as probably a number 2 this year. It's just the flavor didn't really ramp up for me. It does. It tastes better. It tastes good. And it'll probably taste just as good as if I took all those tomatoes and cut them up and made sauce with them. They would probably be fine. Like that, add your salt, your garlic, and stuff like that. You'll be fine. It's not really... But for eating them straight and taste testing them, it didn't meet my standards for a number 1 this year. And so I'm downgrading it to a number 2. But this tomato has, for many years, been a number 1 tomato for me for many, many years. Always been the best. This tomato this year really got wiped out. And unfortunately, a couple of my best performing tomatoes really didn't rank high, including the Boxcar Willie. Boxcar Willie just definitely did not come in good at all this year. So, lessons learned, right? But anyway, still, let me finish this and we'll end the review. Oh man, guys, this is... it still tastes delicious, even with the problems that I'm telling you with the low tomato flavor this year, the low development of flavor. It still tastes awesome. You put a little salt on this thing, you're golden. Trust me, you can eat them. If it wasn't for the fact that this thing was all marred up by tomato spot, I probably would eat every one of these right now. I probably wouldn't even save seed, even though I know I have to save seed. I probably wouldn't. I'd just eat them, because look at this. You can't get a more perfect tomato as far as the color of it, and the seeds and the moisture is in there. That's just perfect, guys. This is what you want when you grow a tomato. That is the tomato look. That's what you want, especially if you're making sauces, especially if you're going to cut it up and put it in salad, especially for salsas. This is the type of condition you want your tomatoes, and that is a perfect tomato. I'll cut open one of the other ones here and see if there's any what they look like on the inside. Now again, these are a little over-ripened here, you know. Some of these been sitting out for a week. Okay, there's another one I cut open. Even this one, it's almost a shame I'm going to chuck some of these, you know. I'm not going to chuck them, I'm just going to get the seeds out of them. No, I'm not going to eat them, because you can see, though. I mean, I may not even chuck them. Some of them are starting to rot, that's why. Look at that. Look at the inside of that tomato. I mean, that is absolutely gorgeous. I got to take a bite out of some of this. So I got to take a piece of this off. I just don't want that mold. Probably won't get you sick. Let me taste that. Same thing, it's very watery, very low on the tomato flavor. It's not carrying that tomato flavor. It's very light this year. The overtones and undertones that kind of come with that tomato flavor, they're kind of more prominent than the tomato flavor itself. So, I'm not exactly a big fan of that. It's like eating watermelon, I'm telling you. Tastes the same thing. They're all doing the same thing. Now, I'm just eating the flesh. There's no seed with this. That one tastes a little better. But as you can see, they all pretty much look the same way, you know. This one's a little... This one never really developed. Some of these I picked green because I had to get them off of there. That almost looks like the inside of a black Tula or black Krim or something. But yeah, that's what they generally look like on the inside. This rich, beautiful, meaty looking color. Man, I'm making this video too long, but that's what you're looking at when it comes to these tomatoes. That's the type of what you should expect to see growing them. So definitely recommend it. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And I will see you on the next one. Take care.